Access to medical care is becoming more and more of an issue here in Guam, and it doesn't even matter if you have the ability to pay. It's getting harder to see a doctor, to get an appointment, or to get the specialty care that you need. So I want to show you a growing solution to a growing problem. They're going to go out of their way to help find you a solution. And they've been growing their clinical services. Aside from this place looking and feeling homely, like this is their waiting area. Like, I don't think that people really understand that they do full clinical services here. Like, this is one of their clinical rooms. Look how nice it is. You get your vision exam here. So do you need to see an OBGYN, get family medicine done, internal medicine done? This is all stuff that's done here at the Total Guam Foundation. And just to tell you again, this place is not for profit. This is the psychologist's office. Yes, they have a psychology department. They also do psychiatry. It's an entire mental health department that they have here on top of all the other clinical services that they provide. If you need medical care, if you're having problems getting a doctor, getting an appointment, call the Todu Guam Foundation at 649-TODU or 649-8638. You can visit them on the first floor of the Sunny Plaza building that's next to Sunny Outlet and behind the old Bank of Hawaii building in Tamuning. Welcome to this new week. It is Sunday, the 28th of June, 2026. My name is Troy Torres, and it is 8:05 in the morning. This is the Sunday news analysis. For me, this is the first day of the week, and so this is, I had my day off yesterday where I got to decompress. I got to think about hardly anything dealing with the news. And this morning, well, actually started last night. It's not true. Last night, I started to prepare for today. But, well, the point is I got a little break, right? I got a respite where I was able to just kind of think. And as I was looking at things last night and then again this morning, I thought, well, there's not that much going on in the news, at least compared to the previous couple of weeks when there was just so much that was happening all at one time. So much so that one big thing in the news became more of like an afterthought, and it was that Governor Lulian Guerrero holding that ceremony about the building of Guam Memorial Hospital, or that medical complex over in Manila, which is, when you think about it, it's a pretty big deal. There's also our power bills are going to go up. I don't think we need to belabor that point any longer. But I almost missed that yesterday, the 27th of June, was the 1-year anniversary of the unsealing of the federal indictments in the largest political corruption case in the history of this island. And so that's one of the things that I want to talk about today, because in 10 days, pretrial motions are due according to the currently set trial schedule in the Tenorio Corruption Case. And I want to talk about what that means for the public and for public interest in this case, and all the unanswered questions that there have been over the past year about the Tenorio Corruption Case, and how far up the ladder that information and that culpability climbs. The other thing I want to talk about is, yes, the issues of Guam Memorial Hospital, and then also Senator Vince Borja's bill regarding a change in the governance of Guam Department of Education, a major change that he's proposing. And it is to change the composition of the Guam Education Board from 6 members who are elected by the public, 3 appointed by the governor, to a board where, and so that's 9 voting members, to a 7-member voting board where 3 are appointed by the governor, 2 are appointed by the legislative speaker, I think it is, 1 being a youth member, and then I think it's a 7th member appointed by the 6th. That's a major change in the governance structure of the Guam Department of Education. It would be probably the most substantial change since the creation of the elected board. I think it was back in 1994, if I'm not mistaken, when the elected board was created. And we'll talk about that, along with updates to Klaru.org, and also today being Peter's Pence, a little bit about the donations that you can make to humanitarian relief and other type of charitable efforts throughout the world through the Vatican. But on the other side of the commercial break, the first thing that we're going to do is talk to Landon Aydlett with the National Weather Service Guam office about another invest area that has been opened by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center near the Marshall Islands. Invest 95W and what that might mean for Guam, Rota, Tinian, Saipan over the next several days or maybe even next week. I don't know. We'll find out more from Landon Aydlett when we come back from the other side of this commercial break. Stick with us.
Good Morning Show with Troy Torres is brought to you by 76 Circle K Guam.
All right, welcome back to the show. It is now 8:09 a.m. on Sunday, the 28th of June, 2026. Geez, the half of the year is almost gone. And you know what that kind of means? It's a couple of things. One is we'll have a brand new governor and legislature in 6 months. And the other is the Super El Nino season will be over in thereabouts. I don't know, Landon, tell us, when does Super El Nino end so that we aren't as, I don't know, um, as worried. I don't know any other
On
word.
guard.
As
Yeah, on
worried
guard.
about all these different storms that we have to watch out for. Good morning, Landon
Yeah,
Aydlett.
that's good morning and good Sunday morning, Guam. That's a tricky question. And so with this El Nino, it's really been emerging over the last couple of months. And we're going to see anticipated peak El Nino conditions likely around October, November, December. So when we're talking about peak conditions, strongest El Nino condition, that doesn't mean, oh, it's going to be absolutely the worst in November and December. It's just when the ocean temperatures are at their warmest, and then we'll start seeing those El Nino conditions wane across the Central Pacific, and that's going to be in the year 2. So these El Ninos that come in like 2-year pairs. We have the onset year and then the offset. And so the onset for us, typically we have more moisture across the Mariana Islands, more tropical cyclone potential. Doesn't mean we're guaranteed hits, but it means we have a higher potential for tropical cyclones. And the typhoon season can start earlier and last longer. And so we've already seen that this year. Looking ahead, we could see some late season typhoons. I think back to 1958, for those of you who were alive and around back then, we had Ophelia in January of 1958 develop in the Marshall Islands and barreled through all of the FSM states. And so I've been warning DECM and folks across the FSM to anticipate any kind of activity like that that could exhaust all resources and response efforts. I don't recall the last time we had a 4-state tropical weather event across the FSM, but it's a possibility in this pattern, and that's because of those warmer waters across the central equatorial Pacific. Things generate farther east and then move through our region. So we have that to look forward to for this year. The 2027, that'll be the offset year. It'll be drier than normal, and so we could see the dry season of 2027 start earlier. Meaning that could start emerging across our region in November and building into December and January with much drier than normal conditions for the coming dry season. So that's going to, of course, have impacts across the FSM where those islands, some of those low islands are vulnerable to 5 or 6 days of no rain. So we're starting those communications, but even though we expect the drier trends to emerge late this year, we could still have a late season tropical weather event that drops a deluge of rainfall for that short-term mitigation. So you got pros and cons across the board. So that's what we're generally looking at. These trends are typical, but not guaranteed. And I like to highlight that because 2023 was expected to be a busy year with that El Nino in 23. It did not materialize by any means. So these are the things we anticipate.
Let's hope for not materializing. But
yeah,
there is something materializing to the east near the Marshall Islands, right?
Yeah, and so I'm going to start to our west, 96. So that was update, just opened up yesterday. Invest 96W,
And that's to our west,
somewhere correct north of Palau, and so that's still rated as sublow by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, meaning that development's not anticipated the next several days, but it's something to watch and could evolve as it makes its way toward the Philippines. So 96 is not a threat to us, but if you notice, a number of Facebook pages and YouTube accounts yesterday were highlighting the opening of this invest, and some stating that JMA was going to start warning on this tropical depression within 24 hours. That post on Facebook was made 15 hours ago. I don't see a tropical depression emerging from this area in the next 10 hours. And so we have to be very cognizant of what we're seeing on social media, the sources of information, because I agree with the George Tappan Warning Center on this one, that they're still rating it as sub low. It's not even on their public Facebook page yet. So we're going to have to watch that. But farther to our east, 95W, that's the enigma we've been watching for several days. It's not done much, but of note yesterday, it shifted to about 10 degrees east. I think that's more of a technicality. It was situated closer to the date line, but then Joint Typhoon Warning Center did reposition it about 10 degrees to the west, now just east of Koshrai. I'm not quite sure the inner workings on that decision versus opening up a new invest on that new circulation, but that is where we are now. So 95W is due east of Koshrai, and it's going to be sitting there for several days. Again, rated low by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, meaning that development is eventually expected, but a tropical depression is not anticipated in the next 24 hours. It's going to be meandering there. We have a strong west wind burst. So for people across the Marshall Islands, we're going to be seeing some inclement weather conditions across the relief thing, that western chain, as well as other places. And the Marshalls are usually vulnerable to a west swell. It's something they don't always get too often, but we're going to see probably a pronounced west wind swell, a lot of wind chop across that region from Koshrai southward and eastward across the Marshall Islands. Eventually, 95W will start gaining latitude, moving north and then shifting northwestward. Will it be a threat to Guam and Sinai? That's a possibility. When will that be? Fortunately for us, after the 4th of July. But right now, the overall consensus still keeps it more to the northeast of our region. But we still have to watch some of those longer range trends that do bring something in some form through the Mariana Islands, possibly around July 5th or 6th.
I didn't check Google DeepMind this morning, but last night the models seem to have favored a more northern track, and the different the different dots that appear. It was
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
is
that's
that, is that
correct.
consolidating that way to be north of Saipan?
We're not seeing too much consolidation yet in the longer range forecast tracks and trends, but I know the AI model, the Google model, that still develops a typhoon intense system moving through our region, primarily north of Guam. This is where all the indicators are pointing to. But of note, the AI model has been consistently south of like the GFS and the European models, which are now latching on to this 95 a little bit better now with its new position versus where it was 24 hours ago. There's a lot of range, a lot of speculation out there. And so this is something that we do have to watch closely, but not be anxious or worried about, because a lot of stuff still has to come together. And the higher it gains latitude, the less threat it will be for Guam, and the more latitude it gains in the near term, the less threat it will be for the populated islands of the CNMI. But a lot of time for things to evolve, a lot of time for things to change. And so again, we're gonna have to watch it closely. We have a full week ahead of us before this thing becomes a possible significant threat to us, and that's still an if.
Yeah, because it could dissipate, right?
That's always a possibility. I don't see much dissipation trend with this one. This surface circulation that's been holding on for quite a while now, for several days, spinning in some form. And now with that west wind burst on the south side of that circulation, that usually works to help things spin up better. So I don't see much support for dissipation like we saw with Mikala as it was approaching our area. That just became a lesser and lesser storm threat to us. But we're going to have to watch it closely. Every disturbance is different. And so we have to rock and roll with each of them as they come. It's like that arcade game, the whack-a-mole. And so we have to see them. Unfortunately, with the whack-a-mole, a lot of these Facebook pages, they like to jump on them as soon as possible. And one YouTube account was even saying 2 new storms, and these are not storms; these are disturbances. And so we have to keep that in the back of our heads.
Yeah. Thank you. And I appreciate that you always providing us the timely and reliable information that, for the most part, pans out the way that you guys say it's going to pan out.
Yeah, we try to be very diligent and deliberate. Like I said, we're not going to be the first to say something's going to happen. We have to be the most responsible, accurate, and reliable, because we have to be accountable for information, because the information we provide, it drives decisions on the ground. People take action based on our information, whether it's from the civilian level or the government level. And so we have to make sure that our information is timely, but as accurate as possible. And there are times when you have to convey something like, I don't know what's going to happen in 24 hours, but these are the best scenarios that we can plan with. And they can be very tough and hair pulling at times.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Well, hopefully we can get an update from you tomorrow morning. Could we have this same call tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be back in the office. Actually, I'll be in the office today to take care of some pressing items unrelated to 95. But in the near term, we do have a fairly dry pattern ahead of us for today. But there is a upper level trough, a tut cell, one of those tropical upper tropospheric troughs, is passing north of Chuk today. That's going to be coming our way. So we could see some scattered showers and maybe even some thunderstorms across the area tonight. And keep in mind, when these upper level features pass through, they can cause otherwise light to moderate showers to be briefly heavy at times, as we saw on Thursday. So we'll have that coming up our way tonight and through tomorrow.
Okay.
And the 4th of July looks like we're going to be in fine shape. So we're going to be bringing in the nation's 250th, I think, in very good weather conditions. Still the big question mark, July 5th and 6th, and where something might be around that time frame.
Well, it's a good time for everyone to start praying since it's a Sunday.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Landon. I appreciate your time, and God bless you.
Yes, God bless, and talk to you soon.
Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. So Landon Aydlett and the folks over the National Weather Service Guam office, they're going to be taking or watching Invest 95W for us. As you heard him talk about all that stuff on social media about Invest 96W, that's not an issue for the Mariana Islands. I think what he said is that it might develop to something that would head toward the Philippines, but it's not even opened as an invest area on Joint Typhoon Warning Center as of yet. This is on other types of models. The 95W, though, something that they're watching, he called it an enigma. It's way too early to tell what's going to happen, but the models show something developing and perhaps coming through this area. Now, where it heads in the Marianas, whether it passes directly through or misses any of our islands or misses us a lot, that's why we have to pay attention to what the National Weather Service is saying over the next few days, as Invest 95W more than likely becomes something that we would need to take a look at more closely as it gets closer and closer to this region. When we come back from the other side of the commercial break, let me just cue up my commercials here. I want to talk about a hodgepodge of issues, including Peter's Pence, an update on Klaru, the effort by Senator Vince Borja to address governance issues over at Guam Department of Education by replacing the elected, the 2/3 elected school board with a completely appointed school board, and also the idea that development on the new hospital could actually be starting. Let's talk about these things on the other side of the commercial break. Stick with us. Sorry, I forgot to turn on the microphone again. That was my fault. Sorry. So, as I was saying, it's 8:24 a.m. on Sunday, June 28, 2026. Welcome back to the show. And I was just talking about, I was asking if you like that I have hair now, and I was talking about how I now have gray hair, and this is where I realized that I didn't have my microphone on. So I actually do enjoy, for the most part, getting older, aging, but that has very little to do with the physical aspect. Like I don't like the aching backs. You make one wrong turn, or get up the wrong way, and you've got something that creaks, and your joints hurt more. All that stuff. It's harder to lose fat. I mean, all that stuff about the physical part of aging, that it kind of sucks, but it's carry your cross, right? But it's the mental and emotional side of aging that I love the most, because when I look back at my youth, or even just a couple years ago, and sometimes just last week, or something like that, I'm like, wow, what a stupid thing I did, or or like, wow, the way I thought back then was just so dumb. So I really, getting older for me is like, it's a thing. Yeah, I generally like it. Sorry about that, May, and good morning, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to the Sunday news analysis. The first part of our show, we talked to Landon Aydlett with the National Weather Service Guam office about Invest 95W, that the National Weather Service folks are watching for us. And the short of it is, don't worry, be happy. The National Weather Service is on top of it. Just pay attention to what those guys are saying and what those guys put out, and never mind the noise of all the prognosticators of the weather on social media, because that could be misleading. The context that they provide could not be localized for us, or for those of us in the Marianas, or the information could just be flat out wrong. And we'll have the National Weather Service whenever we see these things on a daily basis. And if need be, we pick up the pace on how often we talk to them throughout the day, like in the lead up to Sinlaku, right? This second part of what's normally a 3-part morning show, what I want to talk about are a hodgepodge of issues, and not spending a whole lot of time on either one of them. And a lot of this I thought last week, and it's looking like this week starting off as slow news weeks, right? The first thing is Governor Lulian Guerrero. She recently had a ceremony over at the field in Fadian, across from the Gloria Nelson building, the headquarters of GPA and GWA and the CCU. And she had a ceremony dedicating the site as the site of the new hospital. And I have I am a supporter of her vision to build a medical campus at Manilao. I'm also a critic of how she went about it. I'm also a critic of how everyone else in the government treated the issue, and whether they supported it and didn't do much to fight for what they believed in, or they didn't support it and were obstacles in the way of getting it done. It has been since, if I remember correctly, Eddie Calvo established a hospital task force in 2015, if I remember correctly. And it came off the heels of GRMC opening a few years earlier and getting their qualifying certificate, and the Army Corps of Engineers publishing a survey or a report. I think it was in 2011, if I'm not mistaken, 2011 being 15 years ago, showing that GMH needed $760 million or something like that in repairs, if it is to be repaired to standard, Or the Army Corps of Engineers at the time estimated it would cost 700 some million dollars, almost the same amount of money, to build a new Guam Memorial Hospital. That was back then. I don't know what the price tags would be now, right? The point is that since 2015, when Eddie Calvo stood up that hospital modernization task force, and then eventually, I think within a year, came up with the goal of building a new hospital. And if I'm not mistaken, they wanted to build it in the same place, like maybe build it in the parking lot or something. While I can't remember. There's, if I remember correctly, they wanted to build it in the same place, and then there was also discussion about Epal Point. I don't think at the time there was ever a discussion or even a study done on where it should be built. I think it was just that the governor wanted it to be in this place or that place. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. It's just because that was so long ago, right? And Eddie Calvo left office in January 2019. The legislature at the time would not allow him to build that hospital. They just for all the reasons that the legislature always never wants to allow whatever, right? It's just all politics. And imagine if construction started on a new GMH all those years ago. Number one, it would be done. Secondly, it wouldn't cost as much as it would now, I would imagine, because the construction costs and labor costs tied to, the availability of labor, right? So Luliang girl, she comes in, and 2019, she has the dengue thing. 2020, she's got the pandemic. And then she starts to work on building a new hospital. And she does it secretly, as in not something that is done, no meetings with the public, no information to the public. We just kind of find out one day that, there's this land study on where it's supposed to be, and the governor has chosen Eagles Field, and before we knew it, there was this entire thing about how we're going to sign something with the Navy about using that land. And then the land issue came up with when it was discovered that the Navy secretary said that land was excess and should be given back to the government of Guam. Then there was a whole thing about the Guam Ancestral Lands Commission. It was just a hot mess, and a lot of that had to do with, the governor has got to take some responsibility for this, even though she's had the right idea the entire time to build a hospital. It's absolutely necessary. I don't know why that's even a debate. And even if she's got this great plan, I think it's a great plan to build a campus in Manila. Where she absolutely started this thing off wrong was in the beginning, when she failed to communicate not just with the public, but particularly with doctors, clinics, pharmacies, whoever, or like the stakeholders, right? What about the community over at GMH, where the nurses and the doctors over there consulted, or the administrative staff, where they all consulted in this whole thing when it was in its infant stages? And of course, with the legislature. Governors, it's great to have a governor who has conviction and sticks to his or her principles and all that stuff. And you don't have an expectation that your governor is going to bend in the type of way that senators have to bend in order to get a majority of votes to do something, right? Governors have the privilege of being able to stick to their guns without running into as many roadblocks. But in a case like this, where, at some point you're absolutely going to need the legislature to approve things, you want to work with senators, especially with senators who don't always agree with you. And so that when you work with them and then they have some type of advice, and you take their advice or you compromise with their advice in an open negotiating table, and they understand that their voices, which represent our voices, are included in all of this, there's a synergy that's built, and it normally leads to progress. But that's not what Governor Luliangro did. And so the Eagles Field thing fell apart, and then the demands that it be built at Epal Point started to grow and began to resonate with the public, and then the governor moved on to what she called the second option, which was the Fidian option, which was actually the third ranked. The second ranked was Epal. And so, and it has a lot to do with space, right? The governor wants this larger space because it's not just a hospital that she wants to build. She wants to build all these different other things, right? That I think it's a great idea. It's visionary, you know? But then she apparently did not do everything legally. And some things she did do legally, but that was challenged by the attorney general. And all of these things, they kind of pan out in these court battles, right? So the AG was right about something according to the court. The governor was right about another thing according to the courts. And this entire time is wasting because a lot of this is the most salient part of this beginning part of the development is the funding. The governor stashed away $100-some million, 108 or something like that $million for the underground infrastructure needed to operate this new, basically a medical city or a healthcare city in Manila. And it was going to do great things, putting in sewage infrastructure into this entire area, which wouldn't only benefit the hospital, but the entire community, right? Sewage infrastructure, water and power infrastructure that was going to go into this area. And when I interviewed her, she had this great plan where she was talking to medical centers in California with the military for funding, especially for the roads, the access roads and all the roads that they would build. I mean, the governor really has a great plan. But because of, and this is like a government-wide failure. This isn't just like any one person. The governor's got to take responsibility for some of this as well, especially for her own conduct, how she handled things with people she should have worked with instead, like the attorney general and the legislature and the doctors. Everything comes to a head last month. I think it was May. Maybe it was early June. I can't remember. And anyway, so now the governor gets to move forward. But the problem is that the money that she wants to use, the liquidation date is December 31 this year. So it ain't possible to begin those underground projects, at least the majority of the underground projects, and do liquidation by December 31 this year. So she starts to reallocate that money according to what Treasury is able to do or whatever, right? What Treasury is able to accommodate or allow for. But that doesn't stop her, right? She has a dedication ceremony. And she's like, basically it's come hell or high water. This thing is going to happen. It's going to happen in Manila at the place that she has designated. So at this point, right, part of me is like, okay, this is good. At least it's moving forward. I don't know how far this can go in the next 6 months, but something's better than nothing. And it's a good thing that things are moving, right? But then the other part of me is like, wait a minute. Are we going to be wasting any more money here? Because what if the people choose a governor and a legislature who are not in favor of this Manila campus and want to build the new hospital at where GMH currently is, or at EPAL Point, or somewhere else? I don't know where. I mean, this is kind of the prerogative of whoever is the governor and the legislature. And so, when you think about it that way, right? Well, the current governor is Lulian Guerrero. And then you think about it in the long term, it's like, yeah, but she's got only 6 months left on the job. And so are we going to, like, what if the next governor says, I want to build it somewhere else? And here's funding for whatever, and it's going to be cheaper here or whatever. What comes of this development in Manila, which I guess is not a bad thing, right? Like you could repurpose that vision, or like you can have a new vision and repurpose whatever has been done, whatever has been spent on toward that new vision, I suppose. But very interesting. Very interesting. This governor is not going down without a fight on this whole hospital issue. And I think that's, I mean, I've been a critic of the governor, but I think it's quite admirable that she is, throwing this down and saying, look, it's going to be built here. And we're, for the next 6 months that I'm governor, we're going to do as much as we can to get this place ready so that GMH can be built here. And you know what? If there were people, at the beginning of this thing who thought, I'm going to take this away from Lulian Guerrero's legacy, um, I don't think they won. I think her digging in for as many mistakes as she made along the way, right? I'm not taking that, I'm not diminishing from that. But at the end of this, she dug in, she persevered, or it looks like she's persevering to the very end of it. And her name is written all over this thing. If a new hospital really is built, the right thing to do for generations to come is going to be to praise Lulian Guerrero for it. Because this was, I mean, yeah, Eddie Calvo started this thing, right? But he never got one brick off the ground or onto the ground. It looks like Lulian Guerrero is, by the end of this term, something's going to happen, and it's because she persevered to the very end on it. There is another bill. Oh, I'm seeing comments. Hold on, let me look at the comments. Build an affordable hospital, Eddie Cruz says. You know, Eddie, I don't think any hospital is going to be affordable. I mean, I'm assuming, because the term affordable is relative, right? I'm assuming what you mean is that our debt service won't be so much. That when you say affordable, what you mean is that the annual payment that we're going to make on whatever bond this is something that is not going to impede on or have us sacrifice too much in existing government services, right? So you think of like a $25 million debt service, and you consider that that's $25 million in fewer dollars circulating for the annual budget of the government. How can senators and the governor make that work on an annual basis versus a $30 million annual payment, or I don't think it's going to be this low, but a $15 million annual payment? If that's what you mean by affordable, I understand what you're saying, but it just in the layman's understanding of affordable, I don't think there's any hospital that can and should be built for the people of Guam that falls within that realm. There ain't gonna be no only $500 million facility or only $300 million facility. It's going to be an expensive facility to build, and it should absolutely be done because we need a new hospital. We need this, and not for us to die comfortably in it, then for generations to come to be served by it in better health from their sickness. Floor says, can Guam build a hospital that can be funded by the government? Yeah. So the hospital that we build, the construction or the development would be funded by us, the taxpayers, probably over a 30-year period. The governor wanted a big portion of it to be financed by the federal government through the ARPA funds, but because of the fighting that has happened over the past couple of years, that's not going to happen. There could be federal funds appropriated for different things like the roads leading to the hospital. Maybe we could even get some grants. Who knows? I know that the governor really wanted that to be a thing. We'll see over the next 6 months how that pans out. And if this thing remains in the Manila area, or wherever it's going to be, whatever the next governor is able to do, and whatever the congressman or the congresswoman is able to do, right? Lonnie Salas says, 3 days wait for telemetry room to just die before a room is available. Two rights don't make a wrong. Build the hospital. I think that's a general. I think that is a general consensus. I'm sorry, not a consensus. I think that the average, reasonable, and objective Guamanian feels the same way. It's just build the hospital. The average, reasonable, objective Guamanian doesn't care about all the politics that has gone into this thing. Quite frankly, tired of the politics that has gone into this, just like they're tired of the politics that has prevented Simon, and the greed that has prevented Simon Sanchez High School from being built. Flor says, so that the patient is easy to pay for. Oh, I see. Okay, so I think, Flor, what you're, maybe what you are, the main part of what you're getting at, I think, has to do more with universal healthcare. And it is something, we've only asked one question of the gubernatorial candidates, and it is about universal healthcare. And if I'm not mistaken, only 3 of the 5 gubernatorial teams responded to that with their general agreement of some form of right to healthcare. And that is if I'm not mistaken, the San Augustine San Nicolas ticket, I need to go back in my records, the Blas Okada ticket, and the Terlahi Paris ticket. I know for a fact we never got responses from Ada Calvo or from Tenorio Munya Barnes. Okay, so yes, thank you, Flora. I appreciate that. And thank you, everyone, for your comments. I'll be able to read all of your comments after the live show, but let me get to the next thing, which is, I spent a lot of time talking about that one thing. That was an entire segment on its own. I did not mean to spend that much time on that one thing. We'll talk about the elected versus appointed Guam Education Board in its own show tonight on the Troy Torres Show at 7:30 p.m. Let me first go to Peter's Pence before showing you Klaru. So today is I don't know if it's called the solemnity, but I know it's the feast of St. Peter and St. Paul. And on this feast, Rome, the Catholic Church throughout the world, holds what's called a Peter's Pence collection. So there's a second collection in every single diocese throughout the world of the Roman Catholic Church. And in that second collection, the entirety of the second collection goes to Peter's Pence. Peter's Pence is an annual collection of voluntary offerings that's directly goes to the Holy See for the Pope's charitable work and evangelization mission. And I looked up what Pope Leo's charitable works are dedicated to, at least lately, and it's some really good stuff. This is humanitarian aid to the Palestinians in Lebanon, in Africa, in the earthquake and storm-ravaged areas, like recently Venezuela with those earthquakes there, the Philippines. And according to, and then there's and then part of the money goes to the evangelization mission work of the church. So it's the payment for things like, it costs money to feed priests and volunteers, and so there's different things, right? When I looked up how much goes to where, there was a 2024 audit of Peter's Pence, where it was something like 40% went to the like the grants and the charities, and then I think 60% which went to evangelization throughout the third world countries and things like that. So it's just it's a great way of contributing charitably to at least what's been audited as showing, this money actually does go to where it's supposed to go. And it affects people on the ground in the most vulnerable of circumstances, like war-torn countries. So that's for Peter's Pence. You can make that if you go to Mass today, it's at any parish, and it's the second collection where that money will go to. Now, before we go on the break, what I wanted to show you next is an update to Klaru.org. Klaru is it is a platform online that was developed by Guam voter and a columnist for Kandit. He authors the column The Commons. His name is Samuel Kim, and he built this. He gets no compensation for this. This is not something, and he's beholden to no campaigns or anything like that, right? Matter of fact, this doesn't even rank any of the candidates. So what Klaru.org is I think 2 weeks ago, Samuel Kim sent 8 questions, a questionnaire of 8 questions to all the filed gubernatorial, attorney general, and senatorial candidates. And these 8 questions were not something that he came up with in the drop of a dime. These are based on existing Guam laws dealing with transparency, accountability, and the merit system. And it gives the opportunity for all of the candidates to answer how they feel about each of these things, and also to provide their own inputs. And then it places all of these answers onto a scoreboard that voters can go to at klaru.org to view what it is that the candidates say about transparency, accountability, and the merit system. And so the last time we showed you this scoreboard, which was sometime last week, the only gubernatorial team that had answered was Terlahi Perez. Since then, the Blas-Okada team has answered. And, we can go through what it is that they've said just by clicking on them. On question number 1, which deals with an open checkbook, will you publish within your first year a searchable online database of all government of Guam expenditures, vendor, amount, agency, and date, and update it at least monthly? They said yes. On question number 2, which is about procurement sunlight, will you require every solicitation, bid abstract, award decision, contract, and contract amendment above $25,000 to be posted online within 15 days of execution? They answered yes. Question number 3, on sole source accountability. Will you support a public quarterly report listing every sole source and emergency procurement, the justification invoked, and the approving official by name of office? The answer is yes, from Blas-Okada. On number 4, FOIA performance. Will you direct every agency under your authority to meet the response deadlines of the Sunshine Reform Act of 1999 and publish each agency's annual response time performance? They answered yes. Under auditor independence, which was question number 5, will you commit to funding the Office of Public Accountability at no less than its own requested budget and oppose any appropriation that reduces OPA funding below the prior fiscal year? They answered yes with conditions, and their verbatim condition is consideration on prior year lapses, state of government finances, and required capital equipment for fiscal year. Question number 6, audit findings have deadlines. They answered yes to, will you require every agency to publish a corrective action plan with named owners and dates within 90 days of any OPA audit finding and report publicly on completion? Blas-Okada said yes. Blas-Okada also said yes to the merit and hiring question. Let me move this up. Stand by. Will you publish the position description, minimum qualifications, and basis of selection for every appointed position in your administration? They answered yes. And finally, sorry, I'm drinking my shake. Finally, for open meetings, will you require every board and commission within your authority to post agendas, minutes, and recordings as the open government law contemplates, and support real consequences for bodies that do not? They answered yes. Now, let me just go back here. Okay. Let me go back to, So that's the Blas-Okada team. And, there has been some criticism of this, right? And the criticism that I've seen is, so these guys are just going to say whatever they want to say, whatever the public wants to hear, and then we're never going to hear back from them. So I don't know when this feature is going to turn on, but at some point, Samuel Kim, according to the write-up that he did on this, is going to append to this the actual record of the candidates, the incumbent candidates, or those who have a record in elected office on each of these issues. So you get to see what their answers are and compare their answers with the positions that they have taken in the past, with their actual record on the issue. And there's not going to be any ranking of this. It's just going to be fact on fact, so that the voters, whoever goes to klaru.org, gets to see and figure it out for themselves. For the AG position, So far, only Peter Santos out of the filed candidates has answered the questions. So this has not changed since last week. Now, there have been more senatorial candidates who have answered since our update last week. Joseph Ariola, Chris Barnett, Will Castro, Joaquin Cruz, David Duenas, Lillian Guerrero, Sean Gumatautau, Sabrina Salas Matanani, Callan Perez, and then you can't see the bottom of the screen. I don't want to move it, but it's Angela Santos, Jonathan Savares, and Rafael Scambolari have all answered Klaru.org. You can go there and see it for yourself. Now, the other side of the commercial break, hold on, let me just go back to me. It's a great thing, right? What a great public service so that we can see, where these people stand on these issues. Now, what if the Guam Medical Association, for example, or the Chamber of Commerce or the Women's Chamber, or whoever has an interest in certain issues, if you want this type of scoreboard for those issues, I suggest you call Samuel Kim, because obviously the guy knows how to do it, and you can work with him on putting something objective together. These are great public services for us as voters to be able to look to. And remember, there's what, just a month and a couple of days left until the primary election, and not that much time for us to understand better our candidates, especially senatorial candidates, right? Like, I almost never really know who I'm voting for senator, except for some people, until I get into the voting booth. And when I'm in the voting booth, I'm like, what did this person stand for? And is this person trustworthy? And all these different considerations, right? Like, going into the voting booth, I already know who I'm going to vote for governor and for a delegate, and for attorney general, all that stuff, right? But when it comes to the senatorial slate, sometimes I'm in there and I'm just having to think and remember different things. And so information like this is very helpful in helping us to determine, especially the senatorial slate. I'd like to know exactly where these guys stand on these things, and if they're incumbents, what their record already is. What needs to be asked of these candidates, and we're going to ask them, is their specific plan to streamline the business licensing and permitting process? Yeah, we need to ask that question and publish all of those answers. Anyway, it's not just the primary election that's coming up, but in 10 days, unless the federal court makes a significant change and the trial schedule moves from September 22 to a later date, then in 10 days, pretrial motions will be due in the Tenorio Corruption Case. And why that is so significant is that normally, in any case in the federal court or even in local court, pretrial motions are your first glimpse outside of the unsealed documents in a case, meaning the indictment or the information, plea agreement, affidavits, warrants. Outside of those, and for the most part, those documents already are unsealed, and we've been able to report on the Tenorio Corruption Case based on that publicly available evidence and also witness testimony made directly to Kandit. Aside from those things, the public doesn't get to see the rest of the evidence in the case until trial, except during the time that pretrial motions, the responses and the rebuttals and the replies to those responses are due, starting on July 8th and going through the month of July, right before the primary election. If the trial schedule stays as September 22, pretrial motions become due on July 8, and the public will have their first glimpse, our first glimpse, at the evidence and the arguments in the case. We'll talk about that and its significance on the other side of this commercial break. Stick with us.
we delivered. Guam AutoSpot is extending our overstock sell-off with the hottest deals on island, like our 2025 GMC Canyon with $4,000 off. Or slide into a brand new Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, starting at just $24,995. September is your chance to drive big and save even bigger. Visit us today or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com or call 478-AUTO. Guam AutoSpot, where the savings never stop.
The stuff's hitting the spot. I am down to eat some crispy fried chicken today. Extra crispy fried chicken today from KFC. That sounds really good. Look at my Pokey Labbit cheeks. Just getting so happy at the thought of extra crispy fried chicken. It's 9 a.m. on Sunday, June 28, 2026. Thank you so much for joining me for the morning show. My name is Troy Torres, and this is the Sunday News Analysis. Last night, I almost let the entire day go by without posting a significant reminder to us all. And that was that yesterday, June 27, was the 1-year anniversary of the day that we all found out that the grand jury had handed down an indictment in the largest political corruption case in the history of this island. And I have to tell you, I'm highly disappointed in the public attempts to hold the administration accountable over the last year. You know, I think all the newsrooms have done, at the very least, an adequate job, or their jobs, at reporting on the case, especially in the beginning and whenever there were updates through filings in the court. I think that we all could have done a much better job over the last year at dogging administration officials to answer salient and relevant questions that the public has about public accountability and transparency and the perception of widespread corruption that goes all the way to Adelup. Had this been any other era in Guam political history, the media, the public, and the legislature would have been all over this entire mess for the last year. We have made it a point to point out every single time we talk about this, that this is the largest political corruption case in the history of this island, in order to remind us that on our doorstep is an opportunity to actually change things. And over the past year, we have waited for a legislature that has done nothing in the way of trying to hold the administration accountable for the mess that the federal government, through a multi-year investigation by the FBI, has alleged happened since 2020, with the knowledge of the governor, the lieutenant governor, and others in Adelup since at least 2022 that this investigation was underway. All of the unanswered questions that we have had over the past year should be cause for pause in the consciences of all of us, especially as we move forward into the election season, especially as we approach the election on August 1. And by the mere coincidence that the case was ripe by June 25 of 2025 to yield a grand jury indictment, and that 2 days later it had to be unsealed because of the arrests and the answers, and the defendants having to answer to the charges on June 27, 2025. By a fluke of coincidence, because the feds, their time schedule is not based on our local politics. It's based on the criminal justice system and the timelines there. Because of how the defendants were, and how the prosecution did that entire document dump, and the defendants squandered time, that at least that's what the federal judge was alluding to at every time, the magistrate judge, every time there was a status hearing, wondering, well, what's the update on your review of the evidence? And it just kept getting kicked. The can kept getting kicked down until earlier this year, when the magistrate judge, in consultation with the presiding judge on this case, Ramona Manglonia, decided that the trial schedule was going to be set on September 22 of this year, which means that jury selection would start on September 22, and also meant that the very first deadline in the case would be July 8, 2026. 10 days from now, according to the current trial schedule. The parties in the Tenorio Corruption Case have a deadline to meet, and that deadline is pre-trial motions. And then there's a deadline, I believe it's 2 weeks after that, for the responses to the pre-trial motions. And then, if I'm not mistaken, 5 days after that, I have to go back into the schedule, but a shorter time after that, the replies to the responses. These 3 different filings, and it's possible that every single party will have a filing, the 7 defendants plus the prosecution. So let's say all of them. Let's say all of them file a pretrial motion. Then on July 8, or no later than July 8, there is going to be 8 different motions filed no later than July 8. So let's say the close of business, let's say at 5 p.m. And let's say whoever runs Pacer, the online archive system, uploads those documents by 7 p.m. Sometime on July 8, unless there is something significant in these filings, and all of those filings, the federal judge says these filings are sealed. Sometime on July 8, all of us are going to be able to read each of those different filings. And in each of those different filings, what is happening there is a party of the case making a motion to do something that would affect what the jury sees when the trial opens with the prosecution's case in chief sometime after September 22nd. And normally what the defense does is tries to suppress evidence based on what they've seen in the discovery and based on the law. So in these motions, they make these arguments about what the law says about a certain thing and trying to convince the judge, please suppress this evidence. The thing is that in order to make those arguments in the law, they have to explain to the judge what this evidence is and why they believe the jury should not see that evidence. It becomes our very first time as the public to see what evidence is in this case prior to it ever going to the jury. Now, we're going to see much more as the trial unfolds, but we're going to see quite a bit come July 8 or whenever it is. And the defense, any of these parties can file their pretrial motions at any time. Going up to July 8 is the deadline. So it's possible that over the next 10 days, we're going to start to see filings in this case that would reveal evidence that we've never seen before. And, of course, evidence is not proof that something happened. This is just because our curiosity about this whole thing, and our curiosity rightfully so, this being the largest political corruption case in the history of this island, the allegations, the more than 1 million pages of evidence, and the allegations that millions were stolen from the federal government and from the poor in order to profit, these people or whoever, using the influence of the government to do this stuff, abusing positions of power in the government in order to commit the alleged theft. And so this is a very significant timeline for us, or countdown for us, because we waited the past year since the indictments were unsealed, we had been reporting about it for several months prior. We had been reporting on this since October of 2024. We've been asking questions of the administration, of the defendants themselves, getting no answers, or the answers that the public has received have been contradictory, particularly from the lieutenant governor. And so, as usual, with our local government being almost useless in providing us some semblance of justice when it comes to allegations of corruption, there being no legislative investigations so far, answers not coming from Adelup, no one really pushing the envelope on trying to get answers out of administration officials about this largest political corruption case in the history of the island. As usual, it's the feds who come to our rescue. As usual, it is because of federal action that unless the trial schedule changes in the next 10 days, in 10 days, because of the federal government, because of the federal court, we're going to get the first answers about what is this case about and what is it that these defendants are accused of doing, details of which will begin to flood out by July 8th of this year. And we are so excited to do the reporting on this. And we're hoping that the trial schedule does not change so that we can have greater transparency, accountability, and the semblance of criminal justice sooner rather than later. For Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres. You all have a beautiful day. God bless you, and I hope you all go to church. I love you all.